At some point, you begin to notice how much of your life is spent explaining your choices, explaining your intentions, explaining your silence, and even your presence. You explain why you did something. You explain why you didn't do something. You explain what you meant, even when it was already clear. And at first it feels normal, it feels responsible, it feels like the right thing to do. You believe that clarity comes from more words, that understanding comes from more detail, that respect comes from being fully transparent. So you continue. You explain yourself to people who misunderstand you. You explain yourself to people who question you. You explain yourself to people who never intended to understand you in the first place. And slowly, this becomes a pattern, a quiet reflex. You begin to believe that if you just say it the right way, if you just structure it better, if you just add a little more explanation, everything will finally make sense. They will understand. They will respect you. They will see your perspective. But they don't. Because the problem was never your explanation. It was your belief that you needed to explain yourself at all. And without realizing it, you begin to lose something. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, but gradually, subtly. You lose clarity. You begin to doubt your own decisions. You begin to question your own instincts. You begin to second-guess choices that once felt obvious. And this is where it becomes dangerous, because it doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like caution. It feels like you are being thoughtful. But beneath that, something else is happening. You are disconnecting from yourself. You are training your mind to look outward instead of inward. You are conditioning yourself to believe that your decisions need approval. And over time, this creates something deeper: doubts, fears, insecurity. Not because you lack ability, but because you have stopped trusting it. You explain because you want to be understood. You explain because you want to be accepted. You explain because you want to avoid conflict. But in doing so, you give something away. You give away your authority. You give away your certainty. You give away your presence. And when you give it away often enough, you begin to feel it. A quiet shift, a subtle discomfort, a sense that something is no longer aligned. You begin to feel like an outcast, even in spaces where you once felt comfortable, because your actions are no longer aligned with your instincts. They are aligned with how others might react. And this is where stagnation begins, not through failure, but through hesitation, through overthinking, through constantly explaining, instead of acting. And the more you do this, the more your mind fills with noise. You replay conversations, you rethink decisions, you analyze reactions that don't matter. You begin to imagine problems that may not even exist. And this is where you must be aware. Do not be paranoid or imagine problems where there are none. But also, watch out for the patterns that are clearly in front of you. Because when you are constantly explaining yourself, you are often avoiding something deeper. You are avoiding standing firm. You are avoiding being misunderstood. You are avoiding the discomfort that comes with clarity. Because clarity is not always comfortable. Clarity often creates separation. Clarity often disrupts what was familiar. Clarity may be disrupted by how others respond, and that is what you are trying to avoid. But avoiding it does not solve the problem. You are not facing your problems, and they won't go away on their own. They wait, they build, and eventually they force you to confront them. And if you continue ignoring them, you reach a point where everything feels heavy. where your decisions feel uncertain, where your direction feels unclear, where you feel disconnected, not from others, but from yourself. This is where the real loss begins. Not loss of people, not loss of approval, but loss of self. A quiet loss of faith in your own judgment, a quiet erosion of your belief in your own decisions. And if you stay in this state long enough, you bottom out, not dramatically, but internally, where everything feels uncertain, where nothing feels clear, where you begin to question everything. And this is where you must stop, because the answers to your problems are inside you, but you cannot access them if you are constantly explaining yourself to others. Because the more you explain, the more you depend on how others respond. And when your peace depends on their response, you lose control of your own state. You become reactive, you become uncertain, you become someone who waits instead of someone who decides. And eventually, you reach a point where explaining no longer feels right, where repeating yourself feels like compromise, where silence feels stronger than words. And in that moment, something shifts. You realize you no longer need permission to move forward. The moment you stop explaining yourself, everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes different, but because you do. Your focus sharpens, your thinking becomes clearer, your decisions feel lighter, yet stronger. Because they are no longer influenced by how others might react. They are guided by your own clarity. You no longer speak to convince. You no longer speak to justify. You speak when it matters, and you remain silent when it doesn't. This is where a different kind of strength begins to emerge. Not loud, not aggressive, but controlled, steady, grounded. You no longer feel the need to explain your path. You no longer feel the need to defend your choices, because you understand something now. Not everyone is meant to understand you, and that is not a problem. That is reality. You begin to move differently. You choose your words carefully. You choose your battles wisely. You become open to conflict when it is necessary. But you no longer seek it, because you understand that conflict is not something to fear. It is something to navigate, and avoiding it completely only leads to bigger problems. Problems that build quietly, problems that grow beneath the surface, until they become something unavoidable, and when you ignore them long enough, they turn into something much worse. Lost opportunities, missed direction, a weakened sense of purpose, a life shaped by hesitation instead of intention. This is how people drift, not through disaster, but through compromise, small compromises, repeated over time. And eventually, those compromises shape their reputation, not based on who they are, but based on what they tolerate. And this is where everything must change. Because once you stop explaining, you begin to act. You begin to stand firm. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to rebuild something that was slowly fading, your clarity, your belief, your direction. And as you rebuild that, you begin to feel something else return. New vitality, a sense of energy that wasn't there before, a sense of presence that feels grounded, because you are no longer divided. You are no longer trying to manage how you are perceived. You are no longer trying to control how others respond. You are simply acting in alignment with yourself. And that alignment is where real power comes from. Because when you are aligned, your actions become consistent, your presence becomes stable, your direction becomes clear, and people begin to notice, not because you explain, but because you act, because consistency teaches more than words ever will, because action builds more respect than explanation ever could. You begin to learn something deeper, that you do not need approval, that you do not need constant validation, that you do not need to justify your path, because your path is yours. And when you begin to believe that, everything begins to shift. You begin to manifest a different kind of life, a life built on clarity, not confusion, a life built on direction, not hesitation, a life built on purpose, not reaction. And as that happens, you begin to notice something else. Your fears lose their power, your doubts become quieter, your insecurity begins to fade, because you are no longer feeding them, you are no longer giving them control. And that is the difference, because you are your own worst enemy, only when you allow those thoughts to control your actions. Only when you hesitate instead of deciding. Only when you explain instead of acting. But once you stop, everything changes. You stop compromising. You stop overthinking. You stop waiting. And you begin to move with clarity, with focus, with intention. Because in the end, you were never meant to explain yourself to the world. You were meant to live your truth and let your actions speak for you.